What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the first ever video on the Gunner Beat channel. I'm your host, Colin Kelly, and in today's video, we're going to go straight into our 2023-2024 Premier League season predictions. Tough way to end last year for Arsenal, but I'm really hopeful for this season, and I think it's going to be an amazing season all around. A lot of parity around the league, a lot of competition. I think even more competitive than it was just last year, where we saw some pretty crazy results. And we saw all three newly promoted teams stay up last season. However, I don't think that's going to be the case this year. And where I start the table is Luton, Wolves, and Sheffield predicted to be relegated. So that's 2 out of the 3 promoted teams to go straight back down. And I think you start with Luton. Great story. Won through the playoffs. You look at their stadium. You really want to root for them. But I just don't think they have the staying power at the end of the day. Don't have the best squad. Now, can they do it? Sure, of course. But I just think relatively, comparatively, there's a lot better teams in this league. Next, at 19th, I got Wolves. And maybe it's a surprise to some, maybe not so much to others. I just think they don't have the stability. Although I like Gary O'Neill, and he was very much in line, I feel like, to a lot of people for manager of the season just last year at some points. But I just don't think anybody really, for that matter, outside of maybe 2 or 3 managers in the world, could just walk into this Wolves dynamic and will them to consistent form, having lost 2 of their mainstays in the midfield, with Neves, of course, going to Saudi, and then Moutinho also losing your number 9 in Jimenez up top. I just don't think it bodes all that well for Wolves this season. At 18, now I think it's going to be a relegation battle, relatively closing the end of the year, so it's going to be hotly contested, but I think Sheffield's unfortunately going to be on the opposite end of the stick. I do, however, think a large reason why they're able to fight for so long up until the end will be because of new signee Austin Trusty, former Arsenal guy, former Media Pennsylvania, shout out US, shout out PA. I think he's going to be their signing of the season, just as he was for Birmingham City in his first European season just last year. But I just don't think, as a team and a unit, they're not going to have quite enough that it takes. 17, just avoiding relegation. I actually have Bournemouth. Now, I am in that camp of, I don't know why, maybe like to see Gary O'Neill be given a chance to see what he can do, start this year, build momentum maybe. But I guess the run of form was worse enough to warrant change. And I think they've definitely attacked the window. Just brought in Alex Scott, hijacked the Max Aarons deal. So they've invested a little bit, and I think they've got enough momentum, having just gotten in the league again last year, that I think they can fight for their place and they survive another year. 16, I have Crystal Palace. Now, Vieira, mid-season sack, and Roy Hodgson really kind of got them going offensively, that is. And I think they could have a tough season. We'll see what happens in the end of the window with the likes of Elise in particular. 15, Nottingham Forest. I think Forest did well just last year to avoid relegation to stay up, and I think they have enough stability, relatively speaking, continuity. They're a really tough ground to go to. as we saw Arsenal and City, some big teams making a tough time of it, really, out in Nottingham. And I think, really, with the addition of Matt Turner, it's going to help them be solid at the back, and I think play enough of a part in quite a few games to maybe eke out a point or really save a win. So I think Forest, they'll be okay with 15th, staying up to fight another season. 14th, I have Everton. Now, with Sean Dyche at the helm, I think they're not going to play the sexiest brand of football, but however, they are really overhauling to that front line with the likes of Nonto, Ekitike, and then Chermiti. Sorry if I butchered his name. I think you could see maybe one or two of those signings, if they all come to fruition, I think could have a real difference maker leading up from the front to help maybe on the counter, get some pace, get some looks in there, maybe get 10-ish goals and assists. For good season, signing of their season, if you will. But all in all, with the state of Everton, I think they'll be okay with that finish. Although, actually, I know the folks in Merseyside, I know that's ultimately still not even close to good enough. Let's just hope they get real change from the top down. 13. Now, for 13, I have actually gone with Fulham. The manager and leading goal scorer being really intertwined in some murky Saudi situations that dominated the last weeks. I think that's going to be a little bit of an omen for just somewhat shaky. I could see them getting off to a pretty rough start, honestly, but I think ultimately Marco Silva and the squad as a whole, solid enough. They really did prove their worth just last year, and I think they'll do fine to maybe get as high as 10, 11, and that's the thing. There isn't too much separation. Moving on to our 12th team, I have West Ham. Now, European champions, and thank you so much for Declan Rice, by the way. Although he somehow looks like he hasn't even been the most expensive midfielder of this window, which is unbelievable just in the recent hours. We'll get to that soon. But I think West Ham, being in Europe again after having won the Conference League a few months ago, I think they're going to be occupied there, and we'll see if they sell Paquetá. I mean, if they sell him and if they generate over $200 million from two midfielders alone, and with him and Rice, that would be unbelievable. Although they've really shored up part of their spine, really kind of getting David Moyes players in Harry Maguire, and we'll see if they get McTominay, but also securing Alvarez and Ward-Prowse. So I think they'll be in a productive struggle in the Prem for the majority of the season, but we'll see what they do in the Europa League. 11th. At 11th, I have gone with Brentford, and I think Brentford really, even without Tony, they could, with Thomas Frank and Lex Mbumo, and even losing Raya, I think they have such a solid culture and foundation within the club that there's just something going on where I think they're going to be now a bit of a mainstay for a few years now in the Prem. Going up, rounding out the bottom half of the table, if you will, newly promoted Burnley. Now, I feel like this might be a bit of a popular spot for Burnley, right around 10th, and I feel like it is with reason, because no other than the fact that, Vincent Kompany at the helm, just kind of like a Pep regen, if you will, just under the tutelage of him, having played for him like our man Arteta. I think he's shown an absolute ability to dominate the championship last year, and I think they only lost 3 games on the season, and I think they're, with him at the helm. They're going to be solid in defense. They just picked up England's U21 and Travers, phenomenal potential. Really a city pipeline almost, if you will. And I think that youth talent, along with just the systems and the overall quality, that's in place with that staff, I think they could surprise some people. Maybe not. We'll see. I think they're going to be very solidly in the thick of things as a competitive side this year. Maybe some big upsets. We'll see. Moving into the top half of the table, Spurs, I think they would honestly do well to get in the top half, considering Kane is now finally gone and on to Bayern. Just the most boring 100 million plus transfer you've ever seen, just being dragged on. It's like back and forth. Levy, what the hell's going on? Is he going to sell? Is he not? And then once he finally feels like he maybe got some external pressure, or maybe from the board members, now it then ends up, oh my God, is Kane even going to accept it? In the last hours, it was shaky, 50% apparently, but that looks like it's all done and dusted. I think a lot remains to be seen with the 3 weeks we have in the rest of the window, give or take. So they could bring in still some players, but I think actually Postecoglou, I've seen the narrative, that under-the-radar manager could pay dividends for them. We'll see. 8th, I have Brighton. Now, oh my God, the Caicedo saga finally coming to an end. That was most boring transfer of the year, with the aforementioned Harry Kane that we just talked about, in the sense that it just dragged on and on and on. And we had some hope as Arsenal fans back in January. We saw what happened there. It didn't pan out. But really, it was signed, sealed, and almost delivered to Chelsea since the start of the window almost. And oh my God, would you look at Liverpool forking up 110 million? That is unbelievable. You would think Chelsea would be the ones usurping a leading bid, but in the 11th hour, I mean, shout out to Bloom and what Brighton's got going on. They have been an unbelievably well-run club, and I think they'll do well to get 8th, having lost McAllister and now Caicedo, obviously. But they've brought in some talent, João Pedro and the Dutch keeper, Verbruggen, Van Bron, I forget his name, but I think with Europe now, they'll do good to juggle that and a top half of the table finish. 7th, similarly to the season Brighton had, I'd say Villa, with signing Diaby, Tielemans, Pau Torres, they're looking to make a run, and I could honestly see them knocking on 5th place, to be honest, but I think Unai is going to focus a lot on Europe, and he's obviously seen a success record, with the likes of Villarreal and elsewhere. I think that's realistically 7th is the most feasible spot for Villa, given who's ahead of them. Who is ahead of them? 6th, we've got Chelsea. Now, oh my God, they've spent and spent and spent, and that was really the first part of this year, and we thought it was going to be the case for the big chunk of change for their midfield with Caicedo, but not getting him. But looks like they're going to get Lavia now, after Liverpool basically exiting that race and taking over their Caicedo pursuit. I think there's a lot of young talent, and by the pure numbers game, you got to figure a couple are going to make a difference. Maybe the likes of Santos in the midfield. I think Enzo is going to grow into his own even more so. And really, Jackson, really strong preseason. I think he could be one to watch for sure. And Nkunku, though, that's brutal. And I think that really almost ends their chances to really try to push back up into, the true European league that is the Champions League. So I think if they get Europe, though, that'll be a good season for Chelsea. 5th, Newcastle, who's in the Champions League, returning after quite a hiatus, but really well deserved. Eddie Howe is going to be a manager of the year nominee year, I think, season in, season out now for the foreseeable future. And I think they're going to make it out of the group stage in the Champions League, but ultimately I don't think they get as high in the league as they did last season. Sandro Tonali is an incredible signing. Could be up there for signing of the season, but part of that, I feel like you would have to be motivated as a player, and I don't know, from everything that you see, I don't think he's cracked a smile once in his life. Sandro, if you're watching, please, man, just smile a little bit more. But I know it's not Milan, but still. So now rounding out the top 4. 4th, we're looking at Man United, which I think, again, top 4 for this season is an incredible feat given how competitive and how much talent's been injected into the league. And with United in particular, I think they've had a wonderful window with Mount, Onana at the back, really dictating their style of play with what Ten Hag is trying to do. And Højlund, we'll see the injury, how that plays out. But I think they're strong enough with Rashford, Maguire out, Fred out, McTominay likely out. They've done a good job, I think, of overhauling their squad, getting out the dead wood. I think they're almost like a season, give or take, behind sort of the pace that we as a club and Arsenal have been on in terms of trajectory. Although they did win Ten Hag did win his trophy last year in 3rd place, so I think they'll still hang around. Technically, I don't know if it's going to be a worse season, given that they're back in the Champions League, if you can say that, compared to their 3rd place finish last year, but I think United fans would be happy with that, to be honest, depending on how far they get in Europe and the Cups. But entering the top 3, Liverpool. Now, I really think it's going to be a 3-horse race after completing the Caicedo deal, or looks like it's all but finalized. And I think the winning point total might actually be lower than what City just had last year. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I think because of the 3 teams that are going to be vying for the title and the strength of the depth of the league, if you will, I think you're looking at the mid to high 80s really taking the cake for the league this year. Really could come down to the final day, I think. And with that being said, City or Arsenal? Well, yeah, I have a little bit of bias, but I think ultimately Arsenal does get it over the line and win the league this year, even having the Champions League on the docket and balancing that at the same time this year. I just think Arsenal, we've strengthened with the likes of Rice, Raya, now Havertz. I think he could surprise some people. But really, signing of the season, I think, will be Jurrien Timber. He has looked unbelievable, versatile, plug in almost anywhere on the pitch, it seems like, and he can absolutely do a job for you. I just think, ultimately, I do think City will actually win the Champions League again, so that would be something if they repeat as champions of Europe after just winning it for the first time last year. But I think losing Gundogan, losing Mahrez, it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be tough, and I don't think that's going to be a treble-winning season or really close to that. I think they only get one piece of hardware this year, and that is the Champions League. And I think Arsenal are your Premier League champions of 2023-2024. Come on, you Gunners. If you guys liked this first video, look, I know it's a little bit rough for the first time. But if it brought you any value, please, please, please support by dropping a comment, telling me how bad I was, what I can improve on. Or if you somehow liked the video, that would be awesome if you drop that. Or if you even feel so inclined, subscribe. Because there will be more content regularly and only getting better. With that being said, have a great one. Come on, you Gunners. Let's go!